Childhood Circles by Dr. Alon Giladi. Love and War.
On Friday, October 5th, 1973, in the early afternoon, I hurriedly drove with my father to my Aunt Zizi. My attacks had startled my parents, and my mother asked my father to hurry and bring me to her cousin, who was a pediatrician and lived at the time in Kikar Hamadina in Tel Aviv. We drove together, my father and I, in an old Dodge Dart from the suburbs into the city. From the very first moment we set out toward the city, we felt the strange atmosphere. Military jeeps began to appear in front of us. To get to Zizi, we had to go under the bridge over the Haifa-Tel Aviv highway and cross the Yarkon Bridge to the south. The military jeeps had already become armored personnel carriers. Today, things are a bit hazy for me, but I think I also saw tanks in the streets. The streets were painted khaki everywhere. Soldiers were running here and there. The air smelled of urgency, of crisis, of war. I was in 4th grade back then, a sickly and opinionated child. I suppose that this severe attack on the eve of Yom Kippur in 1973 dulled my sense of astonishment at what was happening. The next day, Saturday, at around 2 in the afternoon, the sirens started going off, and we ran to the little shelter with the rest of the neighbors. The lamps in the stairwell were painted dark blue and remained painted for quite a few years afterwards. No one had any particular desire to clean them after that war. Later that day, my father put on a uniform. We escorted him to the old Dodge Dart, and he disappeared into that war. By virtue of my position as the chairman of the class committee and responsible for updating the news, I collected newspaper clippings from those days and read them to the class. I was a sickly and unpopular child. Because of my illness, I had no opportunity to exercise, so I became very fat. My mother's and grandmother's foods help with that too. And of course, the borekas as well. I was a fat, sickly, and unacceptable child. The fact that I was the eternal top student dealt a crushing blow to my social status and my social opportunities, which were already limited due to my character, a crushing blow. Those were childhood days. Every class had a king and a queen. The king of those days and I were friends. Such a strange friendship. The queen, who was the king's girlfriend, was also the object of my love. A quiet, silent love. A love of reciprocity between me and myself. A love that lasted from preschool until that year. Shortly before the war, I mustered up the courage and went to the Queen's birthday party. Her apartment was located on the southwestern edge of the suburb, which was populated mainly by regular army personnel. When I arrived at her apartment, I was greeted by a balding man with intelligent, confident eyes. Penetrating eyes, full of authority and confidence. I remember his eyes to this day. A few days after the war began, my mother, my sister, and I sat with the neighbors in a shelter and tried to glean every bit of information about what was happening, from the radio and television sets of those days. In our search for fragments of information, we searched among the snow for the Jordanian television channel, the Hebrew hour that was broadcast on that station. The announcer announced in somewhat garbled Hebrew, as part of their propaganda broadcasts, that on that day, about 700 IDF soldiers were killed in the Sinai sector, including an Israeli officer with the rank of Major General. Shortly afterwards, it turned out that the information provided was not far from the truth. At that time, my mother, my sister, and I sat together in a shelter and searched for every shred of information about what was happening, while my father and the entire country were at the front. When I returned to school, I saw the extinguished eyes of the queen of the class. To this day, I remember the wise, kind, and confident eyes of her father, who did not return from that war.